everybody, Cindy with Queen Bee Creations. Today's painting tips and techniques is all about using Saltwash. It's a textured medium, something that you add to your paint so that you can add texture to your piece. It's my first time playing with this, so if it's yours, come and join me. We can learn about it together. And as always, if you find this video useful, helpful, entertaining, hit like and subscribe so you can see more of this in future. I'm using a product that is brand new to me. I don't know if you've used it, but I'm going to be using a product called Saltwash, which is kind of like a textured medium, and it's great for creating like beachy, coastal, a little bit of aged effects. And it's a fairly simple technique. I'm thinking it looks simple. I've watched some videos. So we'll see how I do with it. The Saltwash is what's called, let me do this while we're chatting. So the Saltwash, and this is just a small little container of it because I don't know how I like it. We're going to be using, and we're going to be mixing it with a bright white. This is DIY paint, clay-based paint. You know I love it. Hard for me to get, but I love it. In vintage linen. I wanted it to be a bright white to contrast with the top layer. So this is the paint color that I'm going to be adding to the Saltwash. So we're going to be doing the white layer today. And technically you mix, and you can mix Saltwash with any paint of your choice, any kind of paint of your choice. Typically you're mixing about 1 to 1. But I also have some water because the odds are I'm going to have to add in a little bit of water to get the final texture. You're looking for something that's roughly about a really thick kind of cake batter kind of texture because you're looking at adding some dimension to the piece. We're going to be applying this layer today. Once it's dry, I'm going to be painting over it completely. And I'm going to be painting it in, are you ready for this? This is called Salty Kiss, which is also a DIY color, and it is this bright green. So I'm going to paint the whole thing afterward in this, and then when this coat is dry, I'm going to be taking my sander, which again, really loud, really noisy, really dusty. I'm looking forward to it being a nice, bright, sunny weekend so that I can do that outside. I'm going to sand it back. So all of the high spots on our texture are going to show up as white. So we're going to have that contrast between the white and the green happening. That's the plan. All right, so we're adding some in here. I don't know how much I'm going to need, so I'd rather mix up more than have tons left over. Any leftover paint and Saltwash, use it on something else because it doesn't keep. So you have to use it up immediately, in which case, if I need to mix up some more for the legs, we'll do the top piece together, then I'll just go and do it. So, comes with a handy dandy little scoop. We're just going to add it in, and I think I'm going to need a couple of scoops in here. And just a disposable little stick. This actually came in handy to be able to show you guys, so I'm not stirring it all up down below you. You know, just one little plus. Got to look for them when you find them. Apparently I'm not good at mixing without it spoofing all over. So like adding your flour, your icing sugar, the stuff flies away if you're a little too vigorous with your stirring. Okay, so I do want to get some texture. I don't think that I mixed up enough already. So we're gonna, it's bigger piece than it looks, I'm sure. So we're gonna add more right from the get-go. And a little bit more of our texture, but you know what? I'm already seeing this comes pretty full, and as much as this is just a little container of this, it's going to be good for this full project for sure. I think this little container would probably do almost like an entire hutch if you wanted to. So it's going to end up going pretty far, just in terms of the volume you would need. All right, so apparently I get covered in paint and I get covered in Saltwash. That's the way it goes. Wear old clothes, folks. All right, so I'm stirring this up. Now that I've got most of the powder in, I can be a little more vigorous. And you can see that it's kind of thickening it up. And I think that looks like a good texture. I really don't know. It's my first time. I'm thinking it looks like a good texture. I would think that I want it to be thick enough that it holds some peaks, so it gives some definition. I'm looking to just do this kind of in spikes and dabbing, but no, and this is where my head's going with this. I want to see how that goes because that's the simplest look. But I do think that if I like it, because we know I have more Saltwash, then a future project will be my adding in more strategic and deliberate texture. So I have kind of an idea in my head of a texture that I want to try with a little bit of maybe a little bit more wood graining kind of look, but I would need to have like a bigger surface than this is to really have that make a difference or matter. So this wasn't the right piece for that, but it's where my head's going already. So no magic to this. I'm going to put my glasses on just for a little close-up magic here, but we are just dabbing. So now you can see why I put that little piece of tape on so that I didn't have to clean off all of that Saltwash from that later. And we are just dabbing this and adding texture to the piece. So getting some of that medium on there. And you really have, as I'm doing this, you really have the opportunity to kind of see how big your highs are, how big your lows are. I'm thinking they might not be as big as I may choose for them to be, as I may want them, to tell you the truth. So it may be getting this on and then going back over with a slightly thicker version in just some spots strategically. So this whole piece, as much as it looks like it's going to be textured and it's going to be rough, by the time that I add the next paint layer on and then I sand it down, it's actually going to be smooth. So it's going to look textured, it's going to feel smooth, which is the perfect combination of it. This baby has already got its Saltwash applied and it has had 24 hours to dry. So the next step in the process is simply adding our paint color over top. Now I am going for kind of a beachy coastal look, and I'm not going to be too bold about it, but I'm thinking maybe a little white wax can tone it down later if need be. But I'm using this Salty Kiss, this kind of beachy, salty green color over top of the white. This is, again, DIY paint. It's a clay-based paint. Any paint is going to work with this. I would prefer myself some kind of chalk paint or clay-based paint. But all that we're going to be doing is applying this color, and I needed my glasses. We're going to be applying this color over the entire piece. So covering up all of the Saltwash medium that we had applied. Don't worry about whether you get full coverage. We're going to be distressing back anyway. So all of those high spots we're going to be taking off. I promised you that this would end up being a smooth finish, even though we are adding texture to it. And we're certainly going to be going, this is a beautiful green color. I'm just looking at it and thinking that. So all we're going to be doing is applying that color over the entire piece and letting it dry before we begin any of our distressing.
La la la
So here we go. We're outside because one, it's a beautiful day, and two, because I'm going to be making a huge mess. So we've got the table painted, we've got the salt wash on, we painted our green color over top of it, and now we're looking at distressing back. So we've got a lot of sanding to do to be able to smooth this out. I'm using right now 120 grit. I have some finer sandpaper when I get down a little bit further to be able to smooth things out. But right now it's just about making a mess and sanding and distressing back to reveal some of the white salt wash layers below. Hey, here we are at our little desk. We have sanded it all down nice and smooth to reveal a lot of the salt wash below. So there's some slight texture in some areas, but by and large, pretty darn smooth. Next step for us is to start applying wax. The first wax I'm going to apply is clear. Now I'm just using any stone. You could use whatever wax of your choice that you want, but we're going to be applying that wax first to be able to sink in. You can see how much color with the DIY paints it brings back in. This will dry a little bit lighter, but it will be not as light as this and not as dark as this. So it'll kind of be in between. So the plan is that we're going to get this waxed up, the entire piece waxed, and then to kind of soften it a little bit, because we're going for that beachy feel, we want it a little bit lighter than this. I mean, this is perfectly fine. You could leave it with this contrasting as much as you would like. I'm thinking that I'm going to like it a little bit lighter. So what I also have is white wax. Once I've done the clear wax, I'll wipe this down with a cloth. I'll apply the white wax, and then I'll wipe that back with a cloth as well, let it dry and buff it. So here we've got our clear wax applied. You can see it makes it a lot darker. Lighten up a little bit as it dries, but I'm adding some white wax to the mix. So we're just brushing this over the top, getting it down in. I'm just looking for it to soften the look a little bit. Coating this tabletop, but I'm not going to let this dry out. All right, so it softened a little bit, but we're pulling it back. So I just have a lint-free cloth. This is a piece of an old t-shirt, and I'm just going to wipe this back. So I'll bring back some of that green. You get a little bit of the wax sitting in some of the low spots. The high spots, the high white spots are where we had sanded down to the salt wash. So now we're just adding another little dimension to it, getting some of that white down into some of the low spots, sitting in a little bit of the edging, just creating a little bit more interest, softening it a little bit, giving a little bit more of that seaside, beachside kind of feel to it.